The following Conscious Consumer Network recording of a live broadcast is available to purchase in high definition at ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a CCN pledger. For €10 a month, you can have unlimited access to CCN high definition downloads at ethymarket.com. Ethymarket, the ethical marketplace for conscious consumers.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. Be inspired by the voices of visionaries, changemakers, and ordinary, extraordinary people who do what they do all for the love of learning.
This is For the Love of Learning, Voices of the Alternative Education Movement. I'm LAINIE Liberty, and this is episode number 19. In tonight's episode, we take a look at learning communities. A learning community is a group of people who share common academic goals, attitudes, who meet to collaborate on a common goal, such as classwork, projects, and even immersive learning experiences. Such communities have become the template for a cohort-based interdisciplinary approach to higher education, professional organizations, project-based learning collectives, and families. The benefits of learning communities are numerous. The primary distinction is experienced through collaboration influencing the overall learning experience. Many learning communities include intentional social learning, immersive experiences, teamwork, collaboration, leadership, and opportunities for deep interpersonal development, in addition to academic focuses. Traditional learning communities have been experimented throughout the world and throughout the ages. Community psychologists state that there are 4 key factors that define a sense of community. Number 1, membership. Number 2, influence. Number 3, fulfillment of individuals' needs. And number 4, shared events with emotional connections. So participants of learning communities must feel a sense of loyalty and belonging to a group that drives their desire to keep working together and helping others. Also, the things that the participants must do affect what happened in the community. That means an active and not just reactive performance. Besides, a learning community must give the chance to participants to meet particular needs by expressing personal opinions, asking for help or specific information, and share stories of events with particular issues, included emotional experiences. Tonight, we explore the many forms and applications of learning communities with an incredible panel. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to each of our panelists, and then we'll start the conversation. Although these introductions are brief, we have more information about each of our panelists on the show notes page located at consciousconsumernetwork.tv, and look for the show notes page for episode number 19. There you will find more extensive information about their backgrounds, and links to each of their projects and websites. So let's jump right on in. So first, let's meet Dr. Lori Walker. Lori is passionate about the idea of learning, and learning as a natural process should inherently be fun. Lori believes it feels good to learn, asks the question why are so many students bored and disengaged, which is a good question. Lori is the founder and executive director of Village Home, where learners have fun learning. Village Home is a learning community that is built on choice and autonomy for learners. Lori believes that learners are all unique with unique interests and learning styles. The Village Home model allows learners to pursue their interests as an individual while also participating in a family-friendly community learning environment. So welcome, Lori. We're so excited that you're with us tonight. And next, let's meet Andre. Andre is a mechanical engineer turned teacher learning guide. In his youth, he spent 13 years living outside of his home country, Germany. His childhood as a third culture kid in Houston, Moscow, Abu Dhabi presented him with plenty of valuable lessons. He returned to Germany to study mechanical engineering. After finishing his bachelor's degree, Andre felt unsuited for the world of technology, and after some serious traveling and a few semesters of a master's degree, he slid into a new career path. He started teaching math, physics, and English regularly, and grew to love the intricacies of guiding someone's learning process. His experiences teaching in Germany, Turkey, and Malaysia for the last 6 years led him to open up his own learning center, and I'm not going to pronounce the German word as I tried pre-show, and I'll let Andre do it. But what it means, the translation of the name of his learning center means learning workshop. And this is located in Berlin and is now available as a space where learning is collaborative, creative, and a self-determined process. So welcome, Andre. Forgive me for my terrible German, but regardless, we're so thrilled you're with us tonight. And finally, let's meet Penny. Penny founded Self-Design. Penny found Self-Design 5 years ago after having been a teacher and worked in Montessori and Steiner. She felt that Self-Design was even more of an open-ended form of learning and living that would be a perfect fit for her family. Penny believes that Self-Design provides tools and processes to author their own lives. Self-Design is a global network, and the community participants meet weekly online to discuss what is coming up for the adults and children alike and share and support one another. Self-Design provides systems for Penny and her family in support of their individual and personal growth journeys, intersecting into living and growing as a family. Penny feels that self-design allows each of her family members to expand their inner worlds and create a healthy environment to learn and grow together. So welcome, Penny. We're so excited to learn more about you and self-design. Welcome to the show, and we'll start off with you tonight. Penny, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what a learning community means to you and why that became so important to you on your journey. Penny, you're muted.
Okay, got it. Coming from that teacher background, watching my children be born and come into the world and learning and being excited about everything they do. And I knew that going back to the school system as I knew it wasn't right for us, and we needed to find a different way to do things. And I also wanted to be doing this with people and with others. And so when I found Self-Design, which is an idea that a man called Brent Cameron came up with, he when his daughter, 30 years ago, she went into the school system and came out and said, actually, I want to learn what I want to learn when I want to learn it. And from there, he came up with these amazing mandalas to just map the inner world and show us how incredibly huge being human is. And then once we learn how to nurture our own gifts and see our uniqueness, and we can share that with each other. And that's what I want to see in my children, and that's what I want them to feel is really important, is that they have all this beautiful gifts inside them and we can nurture them. So self-design is allowing me to walk alongside them and understand and be curious with how they see the world and looking at their worldview.
So I'm really lucky to know a little bit about self-design. We've had we've done 2 shows with a guest a panelist who was active and pursuing her, I think, master's in the Self-Design Institute. So I'm a little bit familiar with that. But I want to ask you this question. Self-design was the modality that you used to create a community of support around life or learning for you and your family. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's based in Canada, the group of people, and the British Columbian Ministry of Education fund home learners in Canada to have a learning consultant, have what's called a learning consultant, which is a person to support the family to follow their own path and come up with plans and intentions to really nurture the learning journey. So what happens with us here in New Zealand is we have a learning consultant for our group of people, which is people that have joined Self-Design because they love the ideas and the resources available. And that learning consultant meets with us once a week for an hour online, and that's where we bring what's coming up for us and during our week, or what the kids are into, and then they'll help give us ideas. And also that group of people online, we share ideas. It's a collaboration.
Wonderful. Well, we'll come back to you, Penny, and we'll really get into what being a part of a learning community looks like for you in greater detail. But next I want to jump over to Lori. And Lori, in the intro, we talked about the school that you founded, the learning center that you founded. So I would love to find out a little bit more about how you answer that question, why learning has to be so, I can't remember the quote that was in your bio, but why it's so boring and why you came up with a learning center and, what led you to that path. So go ahead and share with us a little bit about your background.
Yes, I started Village Home really out of inspiration from my own 2 daughters. And I think that a lot of times we're inspired closest to our hearts. And so it was their birth and their arrival on the earth that made me start thinking about a community for them and what kind of community does a school need to be. And we don't actually consider ourselves a school. We are definitely not a school. We consider ourselves an alternative to school. But even though we have a building with 400 kids running around and doing things, it's really not a school. I think that in terms of community, the question about why is learning boring for so many people, I think that it's very tied to the concept of community, that a lot of relevance in learning, it comes from our personal experience and our internal mindset when we enter the classroom. And so if we aren't in a community that we're connected to and that matters to us, or in a relationship with our teacher that is meaningful and authentic, then it's really takes all the fun out of learning. Because actually the fun it comes from the connection in a lot of ways, and from discovering with somebody else or through someone else's eyes makes it so much more interesting. And So I think that community is a key part of why learning is fun here. It's not the only reason, but it's a key part of it.
Yeah, those are really important aspects, fun and learning. You have to combine that. But this is the first time that we're really diving into the idea that community is a really important part of learning as well. And we'll come back to you because I really want to talk about and find out from you how community expresses itself in your learning center. But let's first move on to Andre so he can give us a little intro into his background and how he created his learning community or learning center as well. And please say for us the proper pronunciation of your learning center in German.
So, die Lernwerkstatt. Learning workshop is what it means. And I guess I took a rather unconventional path to arrive at teaching. I kind of slipped into it, really, to be honest. After school, a lot of it's based on my own experience. So out of school, I didn't really have much to base my decision on what to study in university other than on what subjects am I good in, and ultimately what you're good in, what you understand is the thing that's most enjoyable. I wouldn't necessarily say that math and physics were things that were particularly fun in school, but out of all of the things I could choose, and at that time it was only the subjects that I had, it was definitely math and physics that I understood best and so that I enjoyed most. And so I based my decision on studying mechanical engineering on that simple fact that those were two things that I could do and that I could maybe succeed in further. I enjoyed studying it for a while. I'm still studying it right now. I don't dislike it, but it's just dealing with technology is something so different to what you do in teaching, where you're dealing with people and connecting with people and understanding the human experience of things. Whereas technology, especially studying technology in Germany, it's very centered around the technology itself. And so I through my background of having grown up in a couple of different countries, have that cultural background, that cultural experience, and I've always loved interacting with people and getting to know cultures through people and getting to know other people's opinions. And so I just thought to myself one day, wouldn't I much rather work with people than work with technology? And having an internship, sitting in an office and doing simulations and these things. And I just thought to myself, this isn't really enjoyable for me. And at the same time, this isn't really what maybe my gifts are. This is maybe not what the field that I could contribute to the most. And I think that's really what jump-started the idea of going into teaching. And starting my own learning center came from the idea of, okay, so I wanted to be a teacher. Then it was the idea of what format now. So do I want to go into schools? Do I want to go into like the Montessori type schools? And I think we'll come back to this a bit later. The German culture plays a big role in leading my decision of starting my own thing and kind of separating myself from the school system. But maybe we can dig into that a little bit later.
Yeah, actually, let's do that a little bit later on. And I know it's something that we discussed pre-show. One of the questions that I have for you is, before we get into, consciousness and the community that you come from, the country that you come from, your experience had been learning was an individual process going through. This is all about what you wanted to do in terms of, math, physics, and so forth. And it was a very singular process. At what point in your learning experience as a learner, did that ever shift? Did you ever have an experience as a learner within a community, or is it you as a facilitator? Did you start facilitating only because you didn't have that experience?
So there actually was a shift, and I can even remember exactly when it happened. And basically the shift came from reflecting on my background. So growing up as a third culture kid, things happen so quickly, and you have to keep on adjusting to your new environments and making new friends and adjusting to the school and adjusting to the country, to the culture, and so on. So things happen so quickly, and you're always moving and going on to the next thing, so that you don't really have time to sit back and reflect. And also, it's something, for example, you never really learn in school. So that skill of reflection is something that I only acquired much later. And then the big shift kind of happened when I reflected on my learning experiences as a child, and I thought to myself, hold on, I actually, the things that make me as a person today, or have given me the successes that I've had, those skills I've actually acquired outside of the classroom. So the learning that took place in school wasn't necessarily the learning that contributed to my development and personality as much as the learning within the communities and the cultures that I was a part of. And I was always a people person, so I was always surrounded by people and going out and immersing myself into the culture. So that shift was really just the understanding of learning in school and learning outside of school had two different effects. And to me, the effect of learning outside of the school was much more had much more of an impact on my personal development. So that was really the shift that happened for me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I do look forward to actually learning about the center a little bit later on in the show. And I know, Penny, you had something that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, in relation to the shift, and we've been talking about the collaboration when we're learning is so much more rich when we're learning together with people, and the emotional side as well. I think that paradigm shift, though, can be for some people a longer process. And what I find with self-design with that weekly meeting is because we delve into that shift, then we can bring that to our week and work it and integrate it into our lives as we're learning and growing together. And that for me has been quite a significant part of it, that continual paradigm shift from that place of we are vessels to be filled with knowledge to actually it's all in here and we want to share it and work together to bring out the best in all of us.
Yeah. Wonderful. I want to jump over real fast to Lori. Lori, I want to ask you a couple of things about, well, first, could you tell us about the Learning Center and how it functions? I see a big row of computers behind you. I assume you're in the Learning Center now, but you identified this Learning Center as not being school, but could you get into that a little bit more? And I'm really jumping into this now because I know we only have you for the first half of the show. So go ahead and share a little bit about that. And then when you're done with that, I want to ask you something specifically about community. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm sitting in the computer lab, actually, in the building. That's what's behind me here. And it's very hot in here, so I am sweating right now. Sorry about that. So we run kind of like in the United States, like community colleges run. We put together a catalog of offerings, and then families pick and choose what they want to take. And hopefully the children are the ones picking and choosing the classes that interest them. So I say we're not a school because we don't have any requirements. There isn't anyone saying you need to take a math and you need to take a history and you need to take a language arts. If a student has a deep passion for a certain area and wants to take 4 science classes, then that's great. We encourage kids to really pursue their interests and their genuine passions. And that's part of the fun of learning too, because if you aren't there authentically, then whatever you're pretending to learn, you're actually probably not learning. So we like the learning to be real, and choice is at the foundation of that. So the families choose the things that they want to take. Once you're inside the classroom, it's very different also because we are not output oriented. So it's not about the students performing. When we were speaking earlier about how there's this classroom experience versus a real life experience, we want it to feel very seamless to the kids. And so in the classroom is just an extension of their life. It isn't a separate place with separate rules and separate ways of being. And part of that is to make it a casual place where you aren't always judged and you aren't put on the spot to produce and perform. So we have no grades, no tests. It's really about coming in and learning for the sake of learning. And what's also nice about that from the community angle is that without the yardstick for the kids, either non-consciously or consciously, to measure themselves against others in the classroom, or even constantly measuring themselves against themselves. Without that, you have a really rich soil for collaboration that's genuine and that doesn't have a contest behind it and competition behind it. And there's also no reason to judge someone else for having learning differences or being in a different spot than you are. Our kids are all growing up in such unique ways, and they're developing on completely unique trajectories. So just because a student doesn't know how to write the essay, the 5-paragraph essay, doesn't mean anything to the kid sitting next to him about his intelligence or his worthiness as a human. None of that comes into play. It's just like, oh, okay, well, I don't know a lot about science and you do. So it's a very judgment-free place to learn because of that.
So are you saying that community just happens as a byproduct of removing the compulsory nature of education and the competition and the testing? Community just happens?
It's a big part of it. I think that it provides the foundation. Beyond that, it's about setting the tone for acceptance and openness, and for helping, like we facilitate ways for families to connect with each other beyond the classroom. And part of that is we have a whole part of our catalog that we call member activities. And those are things that the community creates. And so if someone has an interest in gardening or chess or whatever it is, they say, hey, I want to do a club around that. And then other individuals can gather around that common interest, and fibers are woven throughout the community and connections are made. And so that helps the families connect in an authentic way with each other. And then, of course, we do lots of other things too. We have lots of social media ways to connect. We have activities and programs for the whole family where you can come and play together, which is super important. We dedicate 25% of our physical plant to hangout space. So the families and the siblings that aren't in classes have lounge areas and playrooms to be in and to hang out casually in. And it's an important part of our overall plan. On our main campus, our lounge has a little coffee shop that the kids run. And so you can actually have a snack and play a game or whatever you want to do in that lounge space, because that informal connection is essential for community. So if you're rushing people between classes or between bells or whatever, that never can happen. And by the way, we don't have bells either for a reason. So it's a place where kids can be in their natural rhythm, and they can also choose how often they want to be here, which is nice. We find that as kids are various ages, the way that they use Village Home changes a lot. So as the kids get older, they want more classes and they want to be here more because their social needs are higher. And so they want to be with other people more, and that's wonderful. And the other thing about community I think that matters beyond the classroom is the multi-age setting that we have. It makes a huge difference. So the fact that there are preschoolers wandering around in the same hallway that high schoolers are wandering around in is a beautiful thing. And it's more than just passing each other in the hallways. There's informal learning opportunities all the time between the ages. And that's an important part of community too. It keeps everybody really human and in touch with everybody else, basically.
Well, you said it keeps community very human, and we are talking about a basic human need, which is to connect with one another. And in compulsory school education settings, they remove that element as much as possible. And so what you've done, what you've been able to create, sounds like it's an absolute dream. It sounds like it's a natural setting for learning. It's incredible. I'm so excited that you're here on this panel. And actually, why don't we jump back over to Andre, because Andre was saying that there's a lot of similarities in the way that he's produced his learning center. So go ahead and share with us what your vision has been for learning and learning in community.
Yeah, so LAINIE, you just said it. I mean, that's the dream, really, for us over here. We're trying to do, I mean, all of the things that you said, but we're just starting. So we're in the starting phase. We're on the small scale, already accomplishing a lot of the things. So we already have mixed age groups. We already have courses that we're offering. We already have people who came to us and said we would like to offer courses. We've had everything from 13-year-olds to 50, 60-year-olds come and learn at our center. And we are in the process of growing an active learning community. The boundary conditions, I don't know on your side, and I would love to find out about that. But the boundary conditions in Germany are very tight and very restricting. So the concepts that you were just stating that you guys are already implementing on a larger scale, at least it seems like a larger scale, 400 students sounds to me like capacity of a school already. You don't really find that here so much. So the closest thing we have to that are what we call the free schools, which is the Montessori type schools, the Waldorfs and those things. But those are private schools. So that's private education, which is expensive, which is restricted again in that sense. And really the purpose of our learning center, I come from a tutoring background, and tutoring is also a private ordeal. So it's once again restricting in the sense that not everyone has access to it financially. And that's really a big issue in Germany, is that the type of learning that we're talking about is completely alternative and is really only offered in the private sector. So that's really what we're trying to do, is open that up to the public and give those people who maybe don't have the financial funds an opportunity to participate in something like that. We have it as school-based help, school-based assistance, but also open to other topics and also other age groups. We encourage the young people to also get involved in the non-school-based topics. But as I said, we just started, so we're 2 months in, so it's completely fresh. But we're already, yeah, it's exciting stuff. But we're already seeing some of this stuff come to fruition, and we're at that stage where we're building up our the cooperations that will help us build in scale, getting in touch with schools and really legitimizing our organization. But yeah, there's what we really already noticed is that there's a real hunger for it. There's a real desire for it. So we've been all over conferences and talking with all different kinds of groups and people, and they can really connect and resonate with what we're trying to create. And then that often urges them to come and get involved as well. Because like I said, and maybe we can come back to this later because it's kind of a topic on its own, the boundary conditions in Germany, just to give you an idea, schooling is compulsory. So homeschooling is illegal. So that alone is a major halt, a major barrier for what we're trying to accomplish, because we really also don't see ourselves as kind of an addition to school or an after-school program. We also, exactly as you said, Lori, see ourselves as an alternative to learning, and that's really our vision. But it kind of, at the moment, remains a vision because, practically speaking, we can't implement it as that yet. So we're trying to keep that as our vision and do what we can given the boundary conditions that we have. And so one of my personal ambitions of this project is to carry what we're doing into the schools, and to show that what we're doing also works in schools, and then show the schools from the inside. Look, the topic of learning not being fun and being boring is also at a very extreme in Germany. And then we also have a big migrant population who automatically are disadvantaged going into the system already. So there's large discrepancies of the education that's offered. And we just want to show that it's not really the fine-tuning of the school system as it is. It's a change of the approach that's necessary. And we want to bring that into the schools, and but at the same time create our community outside of the school. So it's not just a school-related thing. Exactly, yeah. So that's I think what we have so far, and a little bit about our vision as well, where we're trying to go.
I love your vision. This is incredible, and I love to see that you're out there making it happen. Where in a community where the odds are pretty much against you. But I know there's a lot of great people in Germany that are really active in the home education movement. We did a show about a month ago on some of the issues regarding home education in Europe, and Germany was one of the main focuses. So I know you're up against some legal ramifications, but the ability to have the foresight and the vision to move forward is so admirable, and I'm so excited that you're here tonight sharing this. I want to shift gears just a teeny bit. And both Lori and Andre have talked about creating community in a learning center environment. And what I want to do is I want to ask Penny how a learning community can be facilitated online, which is what you do through self-design. And maybe you could share with us some of the strengths of having that support system from a virtual perspective as well. Penny, you're muted.
I think that it's an amazing, wonderful thing to have this opportunity to have a centre where you can take yourself to. But then the other side of it is, for us, we have this different kind of freedom where our learning with my children, there's lots of outdoors learning, and very much moving between different places and resources that are already available in our community. So as far as the online once a week gathering is concerned, that's all about just tapping into what is it that we really love in our interests. And we use tools and processes for that, such as mind mapping, and then setting of intentions, and then being able to bring it together with the other people that we're working with in our physical community. So when at the moment in Australia, so we're all home learning families. There's about 15 families in Australia and 6 to 8 here. This one's only been going a year. And we have those weekly meetings to talk about how we make all this happen in our lives.
So what part does support play, and is support also about accountability and goals? Is that like part of the overall process for you?
I think the support for me is more about saying that we can do whatever it is we want to do, opening up the possibilities and not saying this is how it should look, which is pretty much I've had my schooling years, my university years, where you're constantly being told this is how it is. So the support that I'm talking about with self-design is really opening up the possibilities, and everyone's sharing all the various ways that they are doing things. And then we can say, let's move forward in the way that works the best for us and our family.
And I love that everything that you've said is really about learning you and your family. I mean, like you have identified yourselves as a learning unit. And I love that. I think that's so beautiful. So we'll come back to you in just a little bit, but before we lose Lori, I want to jump back over to her. Lori, you created a center. You probably don't have the same amount of pushing against, as perhaps Andre does, but have you received any community criticism about, not being a compulsory school and having grades and having this free form? Or have you received a lot of community support? And I mean from the surrounding community that you're living and functioning within.
Yeah, my hat is off to you, Andre. Good for you for being the brave soul there that's making a difference. It's really awesome. Yes, I mean, we've had both. We've had people who have pushed against us, and we've had people that are very supportive. I think anytime that you're trying to do something outside of the mainstream, it's going to get both energies coming in, and both are useful. It's okay to have criticism, and it causes us to take a look at what we're doing and revisit it all the time, which is nice. And so I'm not going to shy away from the criticism. I have to say that we get mostly support. Kind of like what Andre was saying, there is a lot of people that this resonates with. And when people come into Village Home for the first time, it's interesting because the children get it first. Like they get it immediately. And they start trying to explain to their parents how this can all work. And of course, it just makes complete sense to them. And sometimes for us as parents, we're the ones that have a process to go through in terms of, am I willing to step out of the mainstream? Am I willing to let go of this idea that we need to learn fractions in 4th grade or whatever it is, And so I think that the parents have a big journey, because for most of the parents, this kind of education looks very different than what they experienced. It certainly is different than what I experienced. I went to a public school and had a very traditional kind of education and enjoyed it. I mean, I got a lot out of it. And when I started Village Home, I actually was looking at what were the things that mattered the most. And I resonated with what Andre said there too, because when I really broke it down, what I got out of my education was a lot of the extracurricular things, the opportunities to sing in a group choir, to be in a student leadership group, to take pictures for the yearbook. Those kinds of things are where I learned so much. And then the second place I learned was just from my relationships with the teachers, with the individuals that I got to learn from. And so when we started Village Home, we really wanted to emphasize things that are conducive to doing in a group, like what makes reading the Scarlet Letter better in a group than it does when you're sitting at home on your bed reading it by yourself. So there's good things about doing that too, but there's beautiful things about discussing literature in groups and working on projects in groups.
Okay, tell me. My next question was going to be, what about collaboration? So this is where I really want to dive in. I want to talk about why is it better to work in groups?
Well, I think the main reason is because learning is not an intellectual process. It's a personal process, and it's an interpersonal process. So I think that the way, especially for children, they soak up so much more if learning is coming from them and coming to them from multiple avenues. So I think in a traditional classroom, we think of it in terms of, oh, let's do visual, auditory, kinesthetic, or whatever. But it's actually the people, I think, are the best faucets for learning, and the learning flows back and forth between people. And especially in today's age where the children can get all the facts they need to know from the computer sitting in front of us or from their phone in their pocket, they can get all the facts they need. And so what they really have to learn is how to get along with other people, how to articulate ideas, how to discern information. Those kinds of things is what they need to know. And that's what you get through interaction with your family, with other people in the classroom. It can happen all different ways. And I feel like I should clarify a couple of things. In the intro, you introduced me as Dr. Walker. I don't have a PhD, so I just want to make that clear. And also, we are privately funded, also, Andre. We are not publicly funded. We started out publicly funded, and we left public funding early on because of the constraints within that system. So most of the students at Village Home are classified as homeschoolers in the state of Oregon, and we're lucky because the state of Oregon is pretty friendly to homeschoolers. So homeschoolers enjoy a relatively nice amount of freedom, although there are some checkups that you have to do along the way as homeschoolers. But the students here are technically homeschooled. Does that answer questions?
Yes, very much, and I'm so sorry about the misspeaking during your intro. That was the information that I got. So thank you for clearing that up, and thank you so much for answering those questions so eloquently. And Andre, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, so first off, I need to clarify something as well. So we are private in a sense that we're not related, we're not dealing with public organizations to fund ourselves, even though we have a format where we can receive funding if we would like to. We have a membership program, so you can become a member and literally become a member of our community, and it's very affordable, and I think that's the real difference to the alternatives in the private education sector, is that they're very expensive and very limiting in that sense. And I think that also we open the door for what we call gifting, so not just financial contributions, but for example, if someone doesn't have the finances for even the membership fees, we say, okay, but that doesn't mean you can't become part of our learning community. That just means that maybe you should find another way to contribute, because the only way it's going to work is if we each give to each other and we each support each other. Like I said, it's still fresh, so obviously, and this is a big part of the German culture too. There's that skepticism, and I hear it from all sides. But at the same time, it feels very right, and it's already working so far. And just to get back to the advantages of working in a group and collaborating, the impression that I got tutoring school kids, and also from reflecting on my own school experience, and I tutored kids from all different types of schools, so I really got a wide view of the school system, and then the students outside of their school environment, but still dealing with school topics. So there's still that emotional attachment to the way things are done in school, but then again, they realize they're outside of school. And the way I do things as a teacher, they very quickly realize this is not how we learn in school. But I did one-on-one tutoring. So this is one of the main motivations in setting up a learning center, was that I was missing that group element. And the real reason being is that when I was looking at my students, I thought that the thing that lacked the most perhaps was the interpersonal skills, the communication skills, the ability to put things together in a group, or just the simple fact, like you said earlier, Lori, if you have one student who's not as good at maybe a certain part of physics, but another person is, right now in our school culture, that one person is seen as better or more advanced or further than the other one. And that's not how group work, that's not how it works in the real world. If you want to get something done, that's not how you're going to get there. You get there through collaboration. And it's these skills that you actually, and this is the point, we're supposed to prepare kids for real life in schools. That's what the point of schools are, aren't they? So this is the most important thing after school. It's not the knowledge that you gain, it's how you deal with other people. So I thought, well, this is the major problem. It's not the fact that they're not soaking in this knowledge, that's a problem too, but the real issue is that they're not getting they don't have a space even to collaborate. So even just having a physical space is something that we offer, is something already very unique. A lot of people or a lot of other groups, organizations that we come across are like, oh, we have the concept and we travel and we do workshops and so on, but we don't have a space where we can meet. So they think, oh, wow, you guys are so new, but you already have a space. And we knew going into it that we needed to have a place where the community can come together, where teachers can interact with each other and learn from each other, where students from all different types of schools and backgrounds and ethnicities can cross paths and see that, look, oh, we're not that different, or look, you're struggling with that, maybe I can help you. Or an older student says, hey, I've already done that, I can help you. And that's, I think, something that a space, a physical space like a learning center has the potential to foster. And I think that that is something that, especially in Germany, is lacking, that creative space. And that's the idea that coming together so not extracurricular activities, because that's always also kind of linked to schools with me. It's something you do after school, an after school program, but free time activities, things that you do outside of school in your free time, hobbies and these things. I noticed that very, very few of them have anything to do with learning outside of the traditional things like sports, or obviously there's learning going on there too, but there's no room, for example, so my passions are math and science, and so there's no room, there's no space for outside of school to, in a community, in a collaborative way, engage with math and science topics. And all that requires is a space and someone who is passionate about the topic, and you put those two together and great things can happen. So that's what we're trying to do. Once again, it's a little bit of the vision mixed with some things that are already being implemented.
Penny, you wanted to jump in. You go ahead. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm finding this discussion really fascinating, because as our physical group here in New Zealand, we have about 15 families. It's not huge. They, as we walk alongside our children as home learners and we hear them, that's what they're asking for. They're asking for the space, and they're asking to be together. And as we find spaces, which we haven't actually found a permanent one yet, but we're still working on it, we also see how the mentors, which is not, we'll clarify the language here, mentor as in that person that has some knowledge that other person is after, but they want to work together with this, that back and forth, and not just that I'm the person that knows everything here, but that back and forth communication, and where then the child is emotionally connecting with that person, and then with that knowledge or information or ideas that they're bringing. So yeah, that's it's great. I love what I'm hearing here. Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of this panel. What I find really interesting is each of our panelists is serving a different population, right? So self-design, I'm assuming it's all ages, but are they mostly adults? Or children, teens as well?
It depends on how you're using self-design. So in Canada, where the home learners are, they have a learning consultant that's funded. For us here, because it's not funded and people are generally on one wage, we're using a learning consultant for the adults at this stage. And then us adults are bringing to our home learning families what we're learning from about this type of way of being.
I love that. And I love that learning is not just for the children. Learning is the way that you're approaching it, the entire family. And I always say I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm learning from this panel so much. And Andre, you are then serving kind of after school at this point, because you're supplementing the school, the actual school population. So you're in addition to those that are in compulsory schools, that's your population. I just want to be clear, I understand.
So that's the scope that we're able to offer right now, is basically an alternative to tuition, or our own version of tuition in the community, you could say, I guess. But we are looking to carry this into schools. So I'm currently planning some math workshops where math becomes an active process and not a passive process as it is in schools. So math is something, so I always come back to math as a perfect example, because I feel like the best example of how schools are doing things wrong. Because math is not something that you just passively consume or just purely calculation. Math is a beautifully creative process where the definition is nowhere near as important as the problem you set out to solve and your particular unique path in getting to that answer. So anyone who knows anything about mathematics knows that there's not one right answer to most problems in mathematics. And with problems, I don't mean, you know, solving a quadratic equation or something. I mean much more basic things and much more much more driven by human curiosity. So if we look back at mathematical history and how certain concepts were discovered, that's how it was done. And it wasn't so much driven by this is how you do it and these are the steps to get there. It was more about, let's see what we can do with it. It's about playing with mathematics and having it be a playful, creative process instead of just passively consuming. And then we get back to why is school boring? Well, it's completely passive. There's no activity at all. There's no interactivity between the students. There's no activity between the teacher and the students. So it's completely passive. And anytime anyone is passive for too long, you're going to get bored. So I think that's, for example, the fact that math can be fun too is something that motivates me every day to put in work in my learning center.
Yeah, amazing. So I don't want to take up too much time because I know we only have this panel for a limited time, but I just wanted to throw another model into the mix. I'm hosting this show, but I'm also the co-founder of a series of temporary learning communities, and we apply all of these principles into an immersive travel experience for teenagers that are self-directed learners, mostly homeschoolers and unschoolers. But what I've noticed is the support and the ability to have a joint experience and then have the ability to express what their opinions, feelings, thoughts, and the things that they've learned is more important than the actual content. So the fact that they're able to process it in a supportive, fulfilling environment, and then reflect and then layer all the other experiences from different points of view on top of that makes a rich learning environment. Now, we do this through travel experiences, and we do it, you know, for a very short period of time, 22 days, 25 days is our max, but it's an intensive. But what you guys are doing is you're involved serving communities, serving populations day in and day out. And so what I do know is there's the intensity of the temporary, nature of what we're doing. There's that full, I'm stepping into being present because it is so temporary, and there's full buy-in. My question to this panel is, how do you continue to get full buy-in from your population for an extended period of time? And I'd like to maybe focus that question to Lori to start off with.
So you don't. It's impossible. That's part of the authenticity, is that it's not perfect. So there's going to be days when people are on or off or into it or not into it, and that's human nature. It's a little bit different when you're on a trip and you're in a new place and your mind is opened in new ways on multiple levels. But there are certainly, any given moment of time, there are people engaged in different ways or at different levels. And that's okay, actually. That's real. And we're not going to force someone to be in a place where they aren't. And there's also a huge difference in individuals in terms of intrinsic motivation to learn. So there's a wide variation. And one kid's how they look when they're really motivated in a classroom is very different than how another kid looks when they're very motivated. So I think that when it's about the journey and it's about the process in the classroom instead of about the product, it doesn't matter so much. It's okay. You can check out for a little while if you need to and come back in when something grabs you. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. And I'm really grateful that that is your answer, because that is the most authentic answer to give. So I'm really, really glad that you're tuned into it. Penny, would you like to jump in and talk a little bit about, how through self-design it makes space to be authentic and, and allow for the ebb and flow within the community? Maybe, share what that looks like from your experience.
Some of the tools and processes that we use, there's probably about 10 that we work on as a group. The first one, though, is being present. So that's the 0 point. And when we're being right here and right now, we're not being in the future of what might be or expectation, and we're not in the past with what went before us. Yeah, we're bringing that inside us, but we need to be open to the possibility here and now. And I think part of that is understanding our own rhythms and flow. So when we're able to step out of a situation that we're in that we're not comfortable with, or we're able to say, I really love this, I want more of it, which you can do in a place like both of yours, Andre and Laurie. You're not locked into this place that you have to be. You can explore your own rhythms. And yeah, so being present is one of them. We have a lot of other things too, like the languaging, which we spoke about briefly before the show, and understanding that words to some people mean different things to other people. There's things like being with. So when you're being with someone and fully present with them, it might look different to having the expectation of what you want to achieve. And another one that I love with my children is looking through their eyes and really getting down on their level. And yeah, so there's quite a few more that we work on and explore together.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I mean, that is the absolute purpose of doing what I do in our temporary learning communities, which is having the opportunity to see the world through different worldviews. Before we lose Laurie, I just really want to ask you one last question. Can you talk a little bit about how you tap into people's natural drive to learn and support that at the learning community?
Sure, absolutely. It's actually, here's what I think about the natural drive to learn. I think that our job as educators is to allow learning to happen, because as human beings, we really do gravitate toward learning, and we gravitate toward discovery. It's a natural thing. And if we can just keep the barriers out of the way and keep that way clear for the kids and help them keep the way clear, so that they can continue to tap into their natural awareness of, wow, learning is enjoyable, it's a pleasant process, then that's our main job, is to allow learning to happen. And I think a lot of times in a traditional classroom, there are so many barriers that prevent learning from flowing from the child. And Penny said at the very beginning, she said, it's all inside of us. And I think that that's completely true. It's not about a teacher, filling someone's head. It's about letting that learning flow forward and out of the students. And so the natural drive to learn is very real. And I've seen it in so many different ways. I see kids, Andre, who are afraid of math, and so they haven't tackled math at all in their whole lives, and they go from basic numeracy to understanding algebra 2 in a matter of hours, days, you know, not years and years and years. And it's because they've hit a point in their journey where that learning is ready, they're ready for that, and it flows from them. It doesn't come in to them. So I think that we need to start taking a look at learning as a totally different transaction. It really comes from the individual forward instead of the other way around.
I've heard from facilitator to facilitator and show after show, people say learning the actual, the secret to learning is getting out of the learner's way. And I think you just said it so perfectly. Thank you, Lori. And Andre, did you have something to add from your experience?
Yeah, so I completely agree with Lori that learning is so natural, and it's such an enjoyable process when done in a natural way that you want more of it. You can't get enough of it. At least, I mean, that's once I started learning my own way and through my own rhythms, I could say I've become addicted to learning. I want to learn everything, and I can't get enough of it. And I've come so far that I want to spread that and become and I'm a teacher now. So I completely agree with that. Something that I think that has maybe not been touched on yet is the fact that maybe the first major milestone in a person's life with regards to learning towards a goal, because I think that that's something that's important in the learning process, is striving towards a goal. I think maybe one of the first major goals that we have naturally is to find our place in the world, or find our place in our surroundings, in our community. And I think that our world has become so complex, and with all this technology and all the different cultures mixed and the way cities are set up and infrastructure, and I can go on, but it's become such a complex world that there has to be an element of exposure. There has to be an element of creating the space for them, for people to get to know their surroundings in a natural and meaningful way. And in a way where they can, in an open enough way where they can see, how can I contribute to this? Or do I want to contribute to this? And I think that does require an element of exposure, because we are also rather involved here with the homeschoolers, or the people that are, there is a community of homeschoolers because of the fact that it is illegal. So there are these people connecting and trying to find ways around the system. And we're very actively involved with them, because my co-founder has a 3-year-old daughter. So for her, it's a completely relevant topic right now of schooling and learning and homeschooling and these issues. And I lost my train of thought, but exposure to me means to me it means getting that's where I think that as a mentor or a learning guide or a learning counselor, whatever you want to call it, that's the part of the process where I think a connection to your student or to whoever you're learning with, your learning companion, however you want to say it, is so crucial, because that's the part where you have to understand, who is this person? What kind of a personality do they have? And what might be the right thing for them? And then obviously you're not telling them this is for you, but you're saying, hey, look, you're interested in this. Maybe this could be something for you. You're exposing them to something not completely random, but something that you think, this might be the right thing for you, while still considering the fact that it's completely up to that person to decide whether or not it is the right thing for them. But I think, for example, so in dealing with science, for example, which is something that I also feel very strongly about, there has to be an element of exposure, because science is so integrated in our society. We're so dependent on technology, and it's such an integral part of our society. But no one understands it, and no one knows the systems. And so that is something that, for example, I feel has been missing a lot, is the right exposure. And this is where we're coming to the point where learning is a lifelong process, because this is a problem. So the problem of not understanding technology, not understanding science, is not a problem just restricted to youth. There are plenty of grown-ups, or especially the grown-ups. The older generations are the ones who need that just as much as the younger ones. So, and I think that that's where maybe the most power lies, in creating a space where they can come together and learn on the same level, where a young person can realize, hey, look, I know just as much or just as little perhaps about this topic as this 30, 40-year-old person. And they're not superior to me just because they're older. We can learn at the same level, and we can approach each other at the same level. And I think that is something that needs to happen for collaboration to grow, is looking at each other, no matter the age, no matter the background, looking at each other at the same eye level and saying, hey, we can learn together and we don't have to compete with each other.
I'd like to add just one little thing to that. I totally agree. And I feel like when we look at if a teacher has been successful in a class, the kids fill out an evaluation. And one of the things that we measure on the evaluation is, as a result of this class, were you more interested in the subject or in the topics presented? And if the overwhelming answer is yes, then I know that the teacher has done a great job, because the teacher's job is to inspire the kids to dig deeper and learn more and keep going down that little rabbit trail. And I mean, maybe they aren't interested in that thing, and that's okay too, because that's also useful information. But I think that if the teachers can inspire people to learn on their own, then that is like job well done. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different modalities when it comes to teacher, facilitator, tutor, and so forth. And I think as long as they all, like Lori so eloquently said earlier on, get out of the way of the learner, then they're doing their job. So this has been an incredible conversation. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in about 7 minutes, I believe, after we watch this short video. So we'll see you in just a few minutes.
Here at the College Preparatory School in Oakland, California, collaborative learning is one of the most important ways our students learn and grow.
In math, we work in groups every day, asking each other questions before we ask the teacher.
In English, we lead our own roundtable discussions to deepen our understanding of the books we read.
College Prep is one of the top private high schools in the country, and a terrific model for collaborative learning. The good news, their practices are both replicable and affordable. Take a look at what they do for their students. It may change what you decide to do for yours.
College Prep School is a 52-year-old school. It was founded by two women who had a strong vision of a place where academics could really thrive. The collaborative teaching and learning that we do here is really distinctive. Individual work can be a great way to master content, but what the group work empowers and kind of enables is a student's cultivation of a certain resilience. How do you look to your neighbor as a resource? How do you test your own theories? How do you understand if you're on the right track or the wrong track? The sort of habits of mind that actually are the underpinnings of deeper scholarship.
We have 45-minute classes, and the math classes meet every day. The kids come in and they go over the homework in their groups by comparing answers.
I got the square root of b squared plus a squared. Yep.
And then if they're having no resolution, like a problem was too hard for everybody, that's the signal that says that we need to talk about a problem or two as a class.
The thing I like most about the group work is how easy it is to get help if you're stuck on a problem. I mean, you can just ask one of your group mates to help you, and everybody's really ready to lend a hand.
It's these two lines, and then we do the slope formula from 0 to that.
All right, here comes classwork 30. The ones I care most about are 1 and 2.
And then it says draw the segment from AB to CD. So just connect those points.
We designed the classwork problems to be harder than the homework problems. The homework problems tend to be more straightforward, and the classwork problems are much meatier. And so in order for them to actually accomplish them, they have to talk to each other.
For harder problems, usually our group will work together, and we can usually come to a solution just by putting like little pieces of it together.
Negative D over C for one.
I don't think it's negative D over C.
Yeah, because
The best groups talk about the problems before they take pencil to paper. You really tell their faces are directed towards each other. They are, looking at each other's papers, and they're learning so much more. They're learning how to be proactive. They're learning how to depend on their peers.
Today you will work as a team of surveyors, putting to use your knowledge of basic compass and straight edge constructions. Your only tools will be a length of rope and a piece of chalk.
I feel like when we work outside together, it just kind of brings our group together a little bit more.
You needed someone to hold the rope and someone to move the chalk, and so it was just like the next step in collaboration was working together to make one big end result.
What I do in my classroom is I try to make the kids feel as comfortable and as safe to be able to take the risks that will create a good conversation. On the first day of class with the 9th grade, I start by asking the students what are the values implicit in sitting around this large wooden oval table. And they come up with a list on their own. First and foremost is respect, and also listening to each other, being courteous, having the right geography of the classroom. It's really important. I always make sure before we start class, can you all see each other? Can you make eye contact with your classmates? And if you can't, I have them adjust their chairs so that they can. I always tell the kids, check your ego at the door. Be willing to take risks and just have fun and just throw out ideas. And you throw something else out and it's not fully formed, that's great, because somebody else can jump in and build on an idea. Another sort of easy trick I have is to start with a kind of a reflective moment, a moment of silence, or a little moment of writing.
Remembering you want to have your feet firmly planted on the floor, and then the next thing you want to do is focus on the breath. How was that?
It only takes a couple minutes, but just having that moment to let out the anxiety is great because it really can improve their concentration for the class so that they're able to have that kind of engaged conversation.
And if you guys need a little bit of extra...
What's important is to have a set of guidelines for the students.
In this conversation, I'm going to have you guys write down the questions and then talk to each other about the conversation, about the book. And I'm going to sort of step back and take notes. And I'll do a little bit of guiding, but you guys are going to talk to each other.
And there's 3 particular roles that students will fill. One is the scribe role, where one student is taking notes on the conversation so that all the other students can be fully engaged in the conversation that's happening. Another role is a little map, where one student is monitoring who's speaking when, and they draw these sort of diagrams so that there's a visual map of how the conversation is going.
Now, the other thing I just want to point out, since I'm showing these to you, is would you say this is a good conversation? Yes. How about that? Right.
And then the third role is the moderator role.
So I was the moderator, and it was my job to make sure that we didn't stay on one topic for too long or move too quickly. It was also my job to make sure that everybody talked. Okay, I think we should hear from someone who hasn't talked yet.
Taya, Caroline, Noah, Max.
Well, Athena's making him seem godlike, so I think he's just like taking a gamble at establishing.
When we're having a conversation, you really feel like you're part of the conversation and not like, oh, you're sitting in the back of the class and you can't actually see the person who's talking. And also, it's a great way for people to exchange ideas back and forth and sort of have everyone contribute.
Who do you think is the modern equivalent to Odysseus?
Tebow.
In addition to setting up the conversation the first time around, at the end of each Harkness discussion, to sort of take a few minutes to sort of check in with the students and ask, well, how'd we do?
How'd you do? How do you think that went?
I like that. I mean, I feel like I learn a lot more when we discuss things and we get deeper into it, so. Yeah.
Great. Eli, how does that look?
And I like to keep those maps so that we can kind of chart the progress in terms of Harkness discussions.
And those who talk not so much, right? Maybe step in a little bit, and if other people can help them, because it really is a group effort, right? Some people just need a little bit more help and a little bit of space to do it. So next time we do it, let's be mindful of that. But I think overall, you guys did a really terrific job.
Teaching in this discussion-based way is really the most challenging, but also the most exciting form of teaching I know. It never gets old, and honestly, I feel like I still have a lot to learn about it.
I think the special sauce at college prep is really about the kind of community values that kids find when they come here. They think they're coming for a first-rate academic preparation, and that certainly is the centerpiece of what we're doing, but what I think makes us special and distinct is actually this culture of respecting the individual, of celebrating the small victories, of kind of enthusiastically embracing all parts of the learning experience.
And so we're back, and I hope that you enjoyed that video. The video, to me, as I was doing research for the show, it was really fascinating because it's all about collaboration within a classroom setting. And as most of you know that watch the show know that I come from a background of unschooling and natural learning. And so actually one of the ways that I want to lead from this break and be inspired by that video is to talk about really what I'm going to ask the panel, what does education mean? What is the definition of education to them? And that way we'll set the stage for defining how we can apply those ideas, those philosophies into a community space. And I think each one of us is going to come from it from a slightly different perspective. And as I said before we went to break, Lori did have to leave us for a board meeting. So right now you're going to be speaking with Penny and Andre. So Penny, why don't we start with you? I'd like to know what your thoughts are about, just the general definition of education, and is that somehow separate from learning? We talked a little bit in the pre-show about how strong words can be and how they all have very significant and different meanings to different people. So the floor is yours. Unmute yourself, Penny. Penny, sorry.
I do that every time. Education for me is learning new things and learning new things that will bring more enrichment to our lives and enrichment to others' lives around us. So, we're choosing to purposefully and passionately decide on, for us, because we're home learners, we're deciding on what that learning will look like and what we would like to bring into our lives to become more of ourselves, really. So I think that, to me, the word education and the word learning are the same. They go together. But if I think of the education that I had in my life growing up, it was very much separate from living. So now it's an integrated thing.
So you've combined the words education, learning, and life into one. That's That's powerful. That's really powerful. And before we jump over to Andre, I just have to add to this. You know, for me, I have always thought that education was the institutional thing. It was the content that was dictated by the actual institution. And learning was the thing that learners did. So I always had a separation in my understanding of the two, and it doesn't mean it's right, it doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's just how I divided the words and created a grand awareness for me. Through these conversations, I'm always adjusting and you know, making adjustments and really have become the life learner. So I'm learning from each one of you too. So Andre, I'm curious, what do you think education is?
I think that's a great point that you just made, that education has, or words in general have a different meaning to each of us depending on our background and our experience with these words and what they represented in our environments. I found that in the environments that I'm in here, I'm not going to get around the word education, for example. I'm not going to get around these established names for these processes. So I like looking at it this way of basically saying, let's redefine what education means, and maybe not have it be a centralized definition now. Maybe it can be a personalized thing, like learning already is. Like learning is already applicable to all these different situations. But somehow education, we've all agreed, is, at least in our environment, kind of similar to you, LAINIE, I guess, this centralized thing that is well, at least here, mandatory. So I'd like to start there with not making it mandatory anymore. So that would be a good start for me, because I think that's the first step in redefining education, especially here in Germany. It needs to be opened, and learning needs to become a choice and not something that's forced upon you. Yeah. So to me, education or learning means pretty much what Penny said. Getting to know the world, getting to know ourselves, getting a better understanding of the human experience, which is coming back to learning communities, ultimately what connects us, right? No matter who we are, we're all humans, so we have that human experience that we can connect. And that's what I like coming back to as well when I in my teaching, or just in general, is what really are, like, when we break it down, what makes us human, because that's what we can connect over no matter what differences we may have. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think that also there's the personal side of it, of what do I want to learn, what person do I want to grow into. But I think that we also, as part of the human experience, we learn that we are automatically connected to others, and helping others not only brings us joy, but it brings them joy, and bringing them joy brings us joy. And there's all this interconnectedness. And I think when we talk about collaboration and learning communities, I think that's the point. It's connection, and the power of connection, and what that unleashes, and how 1 + 1 is not always 2. How 1 + 1 can be more than the sum of the parts, if we have connection, if we have these things that are freeing us and enabling us to discover more than what we went in thinking we would get.
Yeah, so, well, what does connection look like to you in a practical sense in your learning workshop, Andre?
So it starts with the topic. So what are we talking about? It has to be something that everyone can relate to. I think relatability is one of the biggest problems with our school system, is that the topics aren't relatable, or at least not in a context of something we can relate to. There has to be a common ground. There has to be something where we can all start from together, and then bring maybe our differences, and then also start with the connection. Don't start with the differences. The differences are going to be there. They're there, and they're obvious. But if you start with the differences, then there's that separation. And if we start with the connection, then maybe we can bring our differences together. and see them as strengths rather than as something negative. So it starts with something as simple as the topic. So that's where it starts, and then that sets the ground. But then also the participatory elements of it. So who gets to participate? Making sure that everyone is involved in the process, and that I think is something that when you're dealing with group work or collaborative processes, you always kind of need that person overseeing the process to make sure that the process is running in a way that everyone is involved, because if some people are excluded, that's where connection for that person stops. Some people are more open for connection, some people are not as open for connection, not necessarily meaning that they're not willing to connect, but maybe they lack certain skills to connect, or their personality is not one that would allow them to connect immediately. There's certain habits and things that need to be factored in when you're doing group work. So it's important to remember that the process has to include everyone in order for it to be collaborative, I think.
Yeah, good point. And I think just coming from that video, it demonstrates one very intentional process of facilitating collaboration in a classroom, which was so fascinating to me. So I want to ask Penny, what does collaboration look like for you in the using self-design as your model?
So it's about creating that space. So it's creating that space of openness and finding that willingness to be open to the different ideas and different ways of being that we all bring to that space. And so asking people to really listen, really hear each other. And that's active listening, and that's a skill in itself. And I think that's something that possibly you need to show people beforehand or during that process, as part of the process. Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about the different roles, and so you bring up the skill of listening. One of the things that Andre brings up is the role of a facilitator, of a teacher, because he's coming at it from the perspective of the formality of teaching in an educational format. So what can we do to help others that are interested, that are either in a formal classroom or that are parts of informal learning communities to, be a facilitator to help connection? Do either of you have any experience or ideas or thoughts that you'd like to share about supporting others that wish to pursue these sorts of models in their own lives? Maybe go back to you, Penny, because what's interesting is you're not in the classroom setting, and you're in a more informal setting. So I'd like to hear from you first.
Yeah, so what I've been doing is facilitating the learning circle, and so that means using the skill of making sure everyone's being heard, connecting up the information as well, and then also expanding on that and looking at where people want to explore, and creating agreements is quite a big one for us. We have a lot of topics, and as this discussion has happened, lots of things come up. So as a facilitator myself, I actually just write them on a piece of paper, and I'm circling every time someone brings in a topic. And then you can see, whoa, that one's really important. Yeah, exactly. Nice. So this is really important to us. We need to work on this a bit more and bring it back in.
When I facilitate these teen learning communities, temporary learning communities, one of the we have two really, really big elements that we, pay close attention to, and that is empathy, compassion, and worldviews. And because ours are structured in a travel environment, we're able to see the world through other people's perspective. Andre, I was wondering what some of the cornerstones or foundations are for you in your learning center.
Yeah, so I think empathy is absolutely a cornerstone, and it has to be, because that's, I think, at the root of connection is empathy. Is I can connect with a person because I can see myself in their situation, or at least I can understand their situation or make an effort to understand their situation. And I think that we touched on it earlier, the role of listening. I think that that's something that for example, is in my opinion overlooked a lot. Is the quiet person, you know, the person who maybe who's maybe the introvert and not as communicative. So there's that the idea that that person maybe can't contribute so much to a group process, and they often feel that way themselves, because if there's a discussion going on, they're not able to contribute verbally. So they think that, hey, I'm not really contributing to the process. I'm currently in Sweden planning an art exhibition, and today there was a perfect example. There was this whole discussion going on, and then there was this one participant who kind of had to like raise his hand a couple of times to even get noticed. But then when he said something, you could really tell that he was really listening to the whole process and all the opinions and what everyone was saying. And he filled in the exact information that we needed at that time. So he was listening so attentively and so focused with the goal in mind, and filled in exactly what we were missing, probably because we were doing so much talking, probably because there wasn't enough listening going on. So I think that that is something that I try to incorporate, at least. And that's where I think that oftentimes it needs, maybe in the beginning, a facilitator to give them a little bit of a push and say, hey, you know what, look at how powerful your quietness actually can be. Look at what you're doing. You're not quiet and not participating. You're not passive. There's some things that are going on in here, and what's going on in here is valuable to the process. And I think that that needs to maybe be facilitated in the beginning. But like we said with learning as well, you create the space for it, you create the awareness for it, and then at some point it flows naturally. So I think that that's something that we definitely try to implement in our group processes.
And I didn't give you a chance, Andre, to answer the question that I asked Penny about what advice you would have for somebody facilitating a learning community based on your experiences and what you've learned as a teacher in this sort of environment.
Yeah. So it comes back to what we were just talking about with listening again. I think that the first thing a teacher needs to do, or a facilitator needs to do, is listen to the participants, is listen where they're coming from, listen what their expectations are, where they want to go with the process, and also what they think they can contribute. So you get an idea of what the group dynamic could be. And then as a facilitator, you have a better idea of maybe which person might need a little bit more of a push, which person might need to be calmed down at times, and just to get an idea of the role that you're going to play. And I think it begins with listening. And I think that's where also for the teacher, there's this stereotype with the type of learning that we're talking about, and I always bring it back to schools because it's the most relevant topic to me, of teachers who are currently teaching this kind of forced system where everything is given and not so much is self-determined. These teachers often say, ooh, getting so engaged with the students, oh, that sounds like so much work, and I have to, it sounds like such a difficult thing and so much time. Yeah, I swear, this is the number one answer that you get from these teachers, is that, oh, this is so much work and I don't have the time for this, and give each single student attention. How am I going to do that? And so on. And I think that once again, the approach is wrong. It's not even that you see it as something you need to do. you have to realize that I have to listen first. I have to first understand who I'm dealing with. And I think that in any group setting, that's the approach. You have to first see what you have to work with, and then only then can you facilitate. Because otherwise you're just facilitating your expectations. You're not really interacting with the group itself. And I think that's where the real strength lies in group processes, is that each group is unique because each group has a unique setup of individuals in it, and that unleashes new opportunities for connections. And I think that is maybe the first fundamental thing a facilitator could start with is, hey, I need to listen and get a feel for who I'm working with.
And also kind of having enough flexibility to let it unfold as it will without any, preconceived expectations of how it will end up. I think that's a huge lesson. I've learned that with working with teens. They always surprise me. We always, take a left turn where I thought we were heading straight. So those sorts of surprises are incredibly pleasant, and as a facilitator we get the opportunity to learn and participate too. How do you think that influence plays a part of a learning community? And I mean from all different perspectives. Influence, from maybe somebody who is part of the learning community that is very well spoken and outspoken, or very, very, kind of there, really holds the space or present, versus influence of somebody who, is a little more docile and quiet, or influence of somebody who has expertise in one area, or influence of one who has passion. How do those all fit into a perfect learning community in your opinion? And maybe I'll go back to Penny with this question.
Yes, I think this is goes back to what Andre was saying. The learning community completely depends on the people that come to it and what they bring and what their influence is. But at the same time, if you need to create that space of mutual respect and the active listening and the facilitating the process, so that an influence isn't dominating and taking away from others' ideas that they can bring as well. So I think it's really important to know that everybody's opinion and ideas count, and then it's deciding, okay, which direction are we going to go with all this?
Does that mean that each learning community needs to define a set of goals, as to how it will function beforehand?
We're currently in the process of a vision statement. I'd like to think that there'll be intentions. So they're not goals as in we're going to end up here in this place, because then that's putting the expectation there. So they're intentions. So we intend to listen to everybody's ideas, and we intend to have a solid location for our group. That was something that everybody agreed upon. And so, yeah, so having a vision statement and intentions that are more open to possibility. You don't want to end up saying this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, very, very important. And what about you, Andre, as somebody who's facilitating in a formal setting? What about vision and intention going into it? And how do you actually ask for complete buy-in from all of the participants? Is there something you wanted to share along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I can keep it simple here, because it's basically, I could just summarize what I just said. It's the same approach. Is any new situation where I come in as a facilitator, I have some. Okay, so I try not to have expectations. So I think sometimes there's these expectations that come up, but at least if those expectations come up within me, I try to keep them within me and make an impression of openness and not trying to force my expectations on the situation. but I think that's what's really important here is that just like Penny just said, if we fixate the process on the goal and where we need to end up, then we don't allow room for where else it could take us. And I think that that's really the power in a group process, is that depending on how the process develops, we could go anywhere. And any of those directions could be the goal we want to end up at. So I think that that's a great way of looking at it. What Penny said is, let's set an intention instead of a goal. Let's set maybe some boundary conditions, like let's pay each other respect. Let's make sure to listen to each other. Let's make sure to give everyone their time and their space. And let's set a direction, but then let's see where it goes. And that's really something that I like to do as a teacher. So I like to I call it freestyle my teaching. So just don't really over prepare and just go in and go with the flow. And I understand that that's something that probably, given my background, I'm a little bit more adept to handle new situations and to make connections on the spot. I've dealt with other teachers who said, "Oh, I can't do that. I have to prepare extensively in order to deal with the situation." So that's probably just a personal approach. But I like, that's my favorite part of teaching is that every process is unique. Whether I do it with one person or with a group, it's always a unique process because we don't know where the process is going to go in that particular situation.
Yeah, it's pretty wonderful because we're coming at this from all these different perspectives, and looking at the definition of education. We talked about education as learning. Whoops, sorry. My computer just shut down really fast, or my connection did. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, so what I was going to say is, as we're all coming at this from different perspectives, we've got, the idea of education. Penny has defined education and learning and life into one. And so if we take this outside of the classroom, we're really just talking about life. We're talking about real life collaboration. And these are models that we can use, which is really the purpose of education as a whole, models to, help prepare us and give us tools for life. So I think adding social learning to the most formal situation, as we saw in the video, and we saw, in the model, Lori's school, and we're hearing about it from Andre's perspective too. We can take all of these skills and actually apply them to life, where we need to learn how to collaborate, where we need to learn the skills behind teamwork. We need to learn, how to negotiate when something's not going the way that we want it. And we also need to learn to step back and get out of the way. So my internet is having issues right now. I'd like to open up the floor and give the panel any, which, can you believe how quickly this went? Pretty incredible. Penny, why don't you go ahead and give us any thoughts, and go ahead and share your links and any problems.
I can continue talking on the topic. So I just want to say, I think, Andre, what you're doing and Laurie's doing, this gift of giving yourself in this place of facilitating the learning in an open way. And I think this is really the way that education is going to be going, to really, for the collaboration and really create bigger things happening, working together. We've been through the separation, and having our own classrooms, our own desks, our own this and own that. That's all this separate way of thinking. Now we're working towards, let's do this together and make big things happen. And it's really exciting. So thanks to you and Laurie, and LAINIE's doing the same thing with her teenagers and the travel. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so I'll just pick up then. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to take part in this. This has been very inspiring, even at such a late hour. It's almost 4 a.m. here now, but I'm wide awake actually. I'll crash after, but right now I'm so wide awake as we talk. Penny, thanks to you for your perspective. It was fascinating, and I'm already thinking of ways I can implement what I've learned from you today. In particular, in writing down some certain things that we always want to have as part of the process. For example, something like mutual respect, or a space for listening, and these things that you were saying were part of your program. I think that that's something that maybe we need to, because we're thinking about what to kind of set as a standard for our teachers to make sure that we're offering a certain standard of the process. And I think that that's something that probably what we'll do, is because we don't really want to set too many boundary conditions, but things like mutual respect and empathy and understanding and listening, these are all things that will help our process. So I think that that's something that I've really taken from you today. Laurie's facilitating today has been excellent, so I want to thank her for that. I also want to thank her for her unschooling perspective. So this is something that I'm always happy about hearing from people who have had the possibility to experience learning in a natural way, because I'm new to it. So I've only been able to do it for a couple of years, and it's been a completely self-motivated choice. I never really had the environment around me. So I always think it's fascinating to meet people who actually grew up in an environment where that was the standard, that was the norm. So that was amazing. And then Laurie giving me another perspective of what a learning center can be, or maybe a learning center in a different location. And then also the scale is very inspiring to me. The fact that she has 400 students and is effectively an alternative to school, which, as I said before, is our vision. So basically she's already living our vision. So that's amazingly inspiring. Yeah, so in terms of links, there are a couple of links, I guess, that I posted on the site. Maybe the most important one would be, well, besides looking at the information, we also have a site in English. We're still looking to gather a few funds, because we're in the starting phase, and since we're a community, we'll be able to fund ourselves once we've reached a certain level of membership. Until we do that, we do require a certain element of support and support in the financial sense. So there is the link for that. It's called Better Place. It's a crowdfunding site. But I think actually, yeah, the more important thing is to look at the information and see if you resonate with it and take something from it. So yeah, enjoy those links. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, I'll tell you my link, which is selfdesign.com. And if you click on the daily messages there, then you'll receive little snippets of what self-design is all about. Or there's also very regularly open house where you can just join in and check out what self-design offers. Thanks, everybody.
pasarla, mana chuka ita pasarla, iskai chunka tawayu kwata yuruna, lunari kitu sumak chami karha, mana chuka ita pasarla, mana chuka ita pasarla, iskai chunka tawayu kwata yuruna, lunari kitu sumak chami karha, shanini taita kunci tuita wang chaya pitak misakini, kutimu naibak manakas kaju maikan supaira apara kata kuruka. Shanini taita kunci tuita wang chaya pitak misakini, kutimu naibak manakas kaju maikan supaira apara kata kuruka. Mana chuka ita pasarla, mana chuka ita pasarla, iskai chunka tawayu kwata yuruna, lunari kitu sumak chami karha, mana chuka ita pasarla, mana chuka ita pasarla, iskai chunka tawayu kwata yuruna, lunari kitu sumak chami karha, shanini taita kunci tuita wang chaya pitak misakini, kutimu naibak manakas kaju maikan supaira apara kata kuruka. Shanini taita kunci tuita wang chaya pitak misakini, kutimu naibak manakas kaju maikan supaira apara kata kuruka.
If you really had to make a difference on a large scale with minimal resources, how would you go about it? Have you ever dared to dream of doing that which seems impossible? On a planet steeped with corruption and destruction, the question beckons, how do we change it? Media has a far-reaching impact on people and has been used to manipulate humanity into our current destructive patterns. In order to affect people into moving into constructive patterns of behavior, we need to construct a new paradigm of media. Conscious Consumer Network has been created with the explicit intention of giving the amazing truth-seeking, solutions-orientated, alternative media a place to fully realize their true potential with a cutting-edge, high-tech professional media platform being made available to use at no cost to the broadcaster. In turn, some of the greatest freedom-seeking hearts and souls of our time have realized the true potential of what has been created and have come together to provide their insight and inspiration on CCN. Conscious Consumer Network has become a unique, interactive information and educational network which provides a free-to-view, live-stream, ultra-high-definition channel to the world and features 25 live shows a week and growing with the addition of multiple language broadcasts. CCN has features comparable with mainstream media, such as being able to pause and rewind broadcasts whilst being live streamed. Catch up on missed or previous broadcasts, now available from CCN High Definition Downloads. You can now purchase a high definition download of your favorite CCN show from ethymarket.com. Support free and independent media by becoming a monthly pledger. This can be done with a monthly pledge of €10, which will allow you unlimited access to CCN's high definition downloads, which hosts a back catalogue of over 250 shows which have been aired since the launch of CCN on the 1st of January 2015. In order to keep CCN free of corporate sponsorship and advertising, CCN has launched the Pledge 300 campaign. This is a realistic goal with the hopes of securing a minimum of 300 people who will each pledge €10 a month. With this number, we can continue to grow and operate and potentially expand into a second foreign language channel. Without it, CCN will simply not be able to function without succumbing to corporate sponsorship and advertising. Help keep alternative media in the hands of the people. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.